is permitted through excitement. Hello everyone, that is the title of today's talk. And what that immediately implies is that when we look at the state of excitement for the human being, it's a very wondrous state. It's a very wonderful state because there's more space to move in regards to being aware of life. So for example, in certain states, one's awareness to life is limited. And the reason it's limited is actually because imagery has been amplified to a degree where there is an isolation that is trying to survive as an isolated being. So it's simply, there's an aspect of that in the design. But when you simply look at someone being excited, when you become aware of your parts of your past where you were excited in that area, you know, you will see that in excitement, eternity is close. You find that you can go much more deeply within yourself because you can even observe at depth. Excitement gives you vision. Excitement is that moment where the soldier was not afraid of the battlefield, but could not wait to present his great display, for example. You know, it's a very big moment. People don't understand, but excitement is the sign of life, in a sense, heating up. So in other words, your life's moving. In other words, the momentum of your life is going much faster. So if you are someone who every day you wake up and every moment of your life, you don't even segment it as past, present, future, you know, or yesterday or tomorrow, and you just simply are here. And as you are here, as you are just complete, absolute experience without any need for ideology because you're just an observance, and that observance to existence, there comes an excitement of as if you have just become aware of, wow, it's like I've been to the same park, but I had no idea there was another path, you know? And so you observe a sense of new observance over that which you thought was what you know. So when you look at what you know, you automatically update it. When you look at a thought, you automatically are like replacing it with your new experience of the new awareness of the thought. So, yeah, you know, it's like that moment perhaps you're in one of those Japanese restaurants where they're throwing the food in the air, you know, and you wonder how much does that person get paid to just be in front of an oven all day, you know, to twist forks and knives, and you're just fascinated by a skill and at the same time career choice, and you're just observing it, you know? And simply there is an aspect of you that lets you see things, and that aspect of you is really the unknown creative part of you. It's that part of you which is the novel. So you see, like when you look around the room, you have an ability to like look at it in a new way, that sense of new, as if you're aware every moment of something new, you know. It's like, oh, every day, every moment when I turn my head, it's like my awareness, I'm looking at everything. It is then very important to see that sometimes there's no path, but you can see where you need to go. And in being, in a sense, pulled by life to attend certain moments, you will suddenly see that your evaluation as a being is not something which you want to find a value for. It's like you don't want to know the answer of your question, so you have an infinite spectrum to work with. But actually, you will see true direct experience is a dissolution of experience. So if you will really want to go to the core of an experience, you become the experiencer, and as the experiencer, you become a stillness. So in other words, you become much more aware in a holistic way, where it's as if like it wasn't, you know, not just you who was only breathing, not just every other human being that was breathing, not just every being that was just, in a sense, breathing in some way, but that regardless of your interpretation, we as human beings, as self-aware beings on this plane of reality, are attending a great ball. It's as if we're all guests of honor. So like we're all guests of what the new moment has created, and so my voice is not valuable based on what it shows, but in the sense of what it is, as it is simply the emanation of that which is unspeakable. You see, you don't have to call it divine, you don't have to call it some kind of story which you're comfortable. You know, names are not required that much because existential awareness doesn't speak. I mean, it's like a tree pretty much realizing himself. It's like the Buddha when he sat down, when he's like, all right, I'm going to sit down and, you know, and I'm not going to get off from beside this tree, you know, until I realize it. When he sat down, he's like, okay, now that I've sat down and I've decided not to move, what am I seeing? And he just saw trees. You know what I mean? So the Buddha constantly saw trees. And in seeing trees, you see that they're not asking questions. So he suddenly became, when Buddha thought he was the most calmest human being, he suddenly realized he's the loudest one compared to the silence of existence. When you become aware of the silence of existence, guys, for me, it was as if that moment where I suddenly realized everything that I've been thinking was as if I was like in some form of dishonestly robbing something out of life. It's as if like I was here and I was supposed to take something and that's it, you know? And suddenly that dynamic shifted because my excitement allowed me to see my other options. Because my excitement guided me intuitively to what was my knowing beyond that option. Because when you do something that you in a sense feel confused or you feel stressed, depressed, or you just don't know, you don't remain in that not knowing for too long. So sometimes throughout the day, I'm walking around and I just get these profound questions, and that question is so deep that it's as if like in trying to answer this question, I'm deconstructing my idea. So it's as if I'm just going into my absolute experience as I'm just thinking of these deep questions, you know. And questions are much more deeper than the observer. It's actually a realm where I can't ask. It's not a question that I'm asking. It's simply what is present. So it's as if like if a transparent lens was looking to see what it is a moment of many lines of intelligence. And so the sense of self-communication within a being is an act beyond an actor. And it's very important to see that the pilot of consciousness is not obsessed with anything. As in that when he looks out, he is aware of reality so deeply, he loves life so deeply because he's seen its hollowness. What that means is that certain Zen monks, they have said, observe the concept of suffering. Even in Buddhism, it's very key to observe suffering. And you see, when you observe suffering, you're simply seeing, oh my God, just like how I've been giving my own life value, I've been giving other people's life value to then behave with them in a way as if like that beggar, he was just another human being. And I'm a human being, and we're only here as temporal beings. So why is not my hand reaching up to his? And so you see that it is the judgment, it is the arrogance of trying to think that we're somebody, that we lose sight of those very important somebodies that are around you. And perhaps the somebody that inspired the song Somebody I Used to Know. You know, so it's very important to see that clarity means to stop. And then also, after the peak of that stopping, the starting is always there. So, in other words, when if we said the ego was simply similar to how a cup, the Zen master's cup probably was filled with tea, when you suddenly pour out the tea, you simply see that it's as if you have reached within this life as a human being, as a physical being, a point where you are, it's as if the planets have not aligned, but that moment where the object of awareness to the object of observance and the awareness to the observer and to the awareness of that which is keeping it there, you know, it's as if like seeing that very beautiful ray of sun hit your face when your face was cold. You know what I mean? It's as good as that feeling. And so you're just there, and it's as if your mind, body, and all your separations have aligned because you or something that you call you is, in a sense, being aware. It's as if we might not be like stars that are, in a sense, emanating their light, but we are, in a sense, emanating our presence. We're emanating a form of existential expression. So it's as if, like, when our eyes open, that is a very important thing. And so mankind must learn to respect the eyes of man, regardless of which man it is, regardless if it's a criminal or not. Some people do not take care of their vehicles well, in the sense that they're not acknowledging the reality of things. And not acknowledging the reality is something in which it happens to everyone. It's that moment where it's as if you were so convinced that you were right there and getting what you wanted that you just totally forgot that you've gone the wrong way. Sometimes we begin running and we think we're going in the right direction, and we just constantly, we don't change our speed, and suddenly we see, gosh, I should have followed my intuition. And so you ran 2 blocks ahead, perhaps. But you can always be aware and come back. You can always be aware of a presence in which there is a very vast existential allowance. And existential allowance means it's not an allowance that's coming from you. It's as if you have sat down and you have just simply, in your stillness and peacefulness, obtained a sense of transparent awareness to life. So it's as if it's not that life's not there. You're observing life. You're seeing it in the range of color. It's right here. You're aware of it. Regardless if you close your eyes, you're still aware of your presence here. It's just that your ability to, in a very holistic way, acknowledge the whole spectrum. So in other words, just imagine sitting down on the grass and acknowledging the idea of, this is the ground, this is my body, this is my breathing, this is my face, this is my presence, this is me being here, this is me being right here. And if you suddenly just bring yourself back to you being right here, as if you're just sitting on the ground. In other words, nobody's asking you what God is, what truth is, nothing. You're just sitting on the ground. And let's say as you're sitting on the ground, you see that you reach a point where in your observance, in other words, once you're just looking at things comfortably, silence has appeared. And that silence is a requirement for you to see that sometimes if you don't struggle, you see. If you don't think that you're suffering, you will have a clarity which will be the next healthy step. So what you really need to do is see that the first, a sense of navigation. Let's say I'm not a Native American, but let's say if I was some human being and suddenly I was just thrown in somewhere that I didn't know where it was. Let's say I'm thrown in some forest. Well, the first thing before anything is I would acknowledge my immediate presence. So that means it's as if like sitting down for a second and just observing how hungry you are, how tired you are, how cold you are. In a second, just observing this. So it's very important to observe your present moment and to be aware of your present moment. What that means is like, be aware of like a meter around you. Be aware of just more than the meter actually. Be aware of the whole room. Be aware of wherever you walk and just be aware of this present moment. Now, if you want to intensify this, be aware of yourself breathing. And you see, as awareness becomes your observance, you become an observer that is as if like you've just allowed yourself not to be stressed. It's as if stress was a different room than, not being stressed. It's as if you just had to walk, you were halfway through the doorway in the stress room and suddenly you just came back. You know what I mean? It's that kind of shift from how thought projects itself to be real and in an instant to be turned into an unreal phenomenon. Because man is at a very crucial point. Science is valid only if philosophy is wrong. And what that means is, in only considering that this is the world, this is it, that is when you see that it's like you feel right. So science is valid on the basis that there is something. But now, how can we observe nothing? And so many people believe we can't, and I agree. Conceptually,
as an idea, as an individuated sense of self based on many years of conditioning and how the human being had to acknowledge itself as more than what it was. And so it's as if a moment has captured it all. And regardless of how taken you are by realities around you, your self-awareness is clarity. So this is one of the healthiest things you can do. This is Mr.Within, in a sense. If I could attach a wise letter to a dove that I had trained for years, and that dove could bring that letter. You know? It'd be a very interesting
note, because what I would communicate to you is that before doing anything, ground yourself. In other words, become aware of the ground, become aware of your physical reality, what you're seeing, what's around you. After you acknowledge this, be still, because after you have acknowledged form, now you need to be aware of the movement of form. So how do you become aware of movement? By being still. So immediately go sit still and relax. One of the greatest abilities you can have as a human being is to suddenly slow things down for yourself to observe in greater depth. In other words, sometimes my greatest, deepest moments are moments where it's as if like I only saw one color and I didn't decide to see the other ones, and I just so deeply saw that one that I had to move to the next color. Do you know what I mean? It's a sense of self-communication in your subtler planes of conception that makes you see that life is more than your ideology, but also your ideology is your life because it's giving it color. So in a sense, you need to move beyond that, which is being in the form of an obstacle. So you're not afraid of anything. You don't have a fear, okay? You just have a view that is fearful. You're giving it that color. It's as if you're like, okay, I'm looking at life, I'm being aware of my memory, I'm being aware like this, and oh God, this is how I interpret it as fear. Because I've noticed that there have been times where anger comes into your life, but you are so able to just wake up the next day without remembering anything, that it's just a fantastic phenomenon, you know? It's as if regardless of how angry I get at my brother, the next morning it's as if it never happened, you know? So it's by being aware of yourself as life, you learn the valuable lesson of observing the temporal. You see that things go through a process of change, and so you are a changing process. And so the value of your whole life is that in this cycle, or in this life process where you've been changing from day one, you know, just observe the fact that you've just been in awareness to change. Even your physical body changes after 2 weeks or so. So change is a reality which you must immediately confront, and your sense of heaven should not be one side of the change. In other words, you're going through good and bad experiences your whole life. Heaven shouldn't just be like one certain range of good experience, you know? Heaven and hell should only be imagery and should not be experience of the imagery. They should be just like paintings on the wall which you choose to give color. You choose not to give color, but to look at. You must acknowledge your intelligence in profound ways, or how else can you see how profound it is? If you do not ask yourself that question that no one's ever asked, how else would you know? So you must follow your own holy curiosity. You must see that when people had the concept of divinity, the concept of divine, that meant there was such a trust in life that it was as if you were being guided to your next step. It's that breathing happened on its own. Living happened on its own. There was no sense of individualization unless one chooses to. And by acknowledging this, and by acknowledging the fact that you exist in an individual world, gives you a great spectrum. Because what I have noticed is that it's as if through my human life, I was first, a physical body, then I got self-awareness, then I got an ability to recognize myself through ideas and imagery, and I could read and whatnot. And so let's say I absorbed a lot of knowledge on of what it means to
see an infinite spectrum, let's say. Just natural knowledge by looking at life and how that was just communicated. Now, let's say I have looked at this to a point where I'm seeing that I was never looking. So I see that, oh God, the point A was wrong. There was never a point A. So B, C, D, E, F, G, all this stuff doesn't make sense, only if I choose to say point A is wrong. So it's very important, I realize, to be honest. And honesty means that you let things happen. You know? It's as if that moment where someone actually feels better facing the music because, I let it happen. Before I wasn't. And all this happens because your ideology is fixing you up in a way where you don't want to feel ruined. In other words, if you become sensitive to your dream, they teach you of how temporal, in a sense, thought can be in your experience. You will find that some moments will have a crevice into the unknown. And what that means is you will observe reality and a sense of wonder will come to you, that this wonder becomes your ticket to the next greater sense of platform of awareness. So what that means is sometimes, at least in my experience, in Mr. Within's experience, through a sense of reaching a very transparent state of being, or in a sense, my ideology dissolved. So in other words, if you asked me a question, I could not speak. There was no voice. There was just awareness. And so, regardless, I noticed that in asking a deep question, you will always find the truth. How could you not? In just being observant and mindful and self-aware, there's no reason for you not to reach a realized outcome. In other words, don't call it enlightenment. Sit down, observe yourself, and study yourself. And study yourself with a love, in a sense that you will sometimes see that, gosh, you've been living wrong. And you confront these aspects of you, because if you don't, they'll keep communicating to your present moment because they're still there. So what that means is if you ignore an experience in your childhood or something tragic that happened, you in a sense are pushing it away to then have that come back in another form. So you'd kind of feel insecure in the future. The best way to handle this is to realize it's a relationship that you are originating. So simply just go in a calm mode, just relax, and allow yourself to relive that situation in your mind and to be comfortable thinking about it. And after you've been comfortable thinking about it, just be aware of it, and after you're aware of it, see how natural it is, just like how you had a thought about a morning coffee, and let it go. It's as if you're, in a sense, just walking past. You're not trying to, in a sense, touch that which you can. And it is actually very hard because many beings go through many transitions in which they interpret it as a negative to, in a sense, get a greater momentum towards a positive. But regardless of how polarity communicates, there is a simultaneity to how you are as an experiencer on this plane that will show you that there is no judgment when there is no judge. So you no longer need to look for hammers to break walls. You simply dissolve limitation into a limitless observance. And so it's that moment where you walk gently and you realize all those fairy tales and fantasies and stories you thought, your life is one of them. Because those were all realities you're aware of now, and so you're aware of this reality too. So you do not ignore the self. What's on your to-do list? Awareness to self. What is the greatest medicine? Awareness to self. What's the freest and cheapest and simplest thing that any being can do regardless of their physicality? Awareness to self. Regardless of your disability, handicap, you can be aware of yourself. All that you require to tell someone is not to give them have a knowledge information explosion. You don't need to expose a lot of information to kids at a young age, because if you do, you are making that form of reception more real than the sense of them actually seeking it and going. So what you need is actually, think of it this way. A child is like a being simply just coming into physicality. Let's say as if you were some cloud of light and you just like, you were just this random cloud of light and you suddenly, boom, you just suddenly became this form. Now as a kid, you see other human beings that are here, and so they are observing you, and so if you're able to observe them, you can understand from the human being. So that's what the child does. It learns from the parents and whatnot. But when it goes to school, or in a sense, how it receives its environment, if its environment is telling it too much, sometimes the child might not be able to push away what the environment is telling it. So a child, for example, could be weak. In other words, a child is not that strong. So if an idea comes that is too intense, the child's mind may in a sense, think that it has to always be in that response, So if you, for example, scare a kid, that kid's going to always feel like, oh God, no. It's as if they get an association to their moment. All problems arise when you do not understand that you are a new moment of being, in the sense that you are a new awareness to all being. So there's a sense of clarity that is the nature of your mind. And when you experientially know your nature, you are untouched, but in a sense, also required to be humble. Because that's when gurus become important. When your own ideas don't become important for you, that's when you've just become that person in which all those people with beards in India, which the authentic ones, in a sense, ones that are not actually in the city, or not, you can't find them, you have to go find them. And it's very hard to find them. And it's actually a search where you're longing. It's as if a reunion, but, regardless. It is then, when your ears are empty, that you may begin becoming wise. Wisdom never begins with what you think. It begins with you acknowledging what you think and then putting it aside, like perhaps a book, and trying to observe other books and see how information appears to you. Because information does not appear the same to everybody, and so how you acknowledge it, there isn't the same teaching method. So for example, I enjoy certain type of experiences more than others. And so when I am in those experiences, pretty much what is happening is that I'm seeing there's a new allowance for a new sense of self to have that joy. It's like the minute you just don't take the idea game too seriously, you're just comfortable. I like to tell the story to all those people who are interested in social behavior, especially in this time of ours. You see, there was a man named Guru Padmasambhava, and this kid actually, at the age of 22, he meets this princess, and he's a very enlightened being, he's a very realized being in Tibet, and Guru Padmasambhava, in a sense, begins teaching this princess, this very beautiful princess by the lake, Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was teaching her. And so what happens is that Guru Padmasambhava is just passing on this wisdom and this knowledge to this girl. And in a sense, you don't have that physical urge. So as that being, he was aware that he was beyond the physical form, in the sense that the physical form was his emanation. So he was very playful, he was a very able being. So as this being came into manifestation at the age of 22, evidently, or something around that age, let's say, he finds that there has been a spy, and the king, in a sense, is coming to capture him. And so the king takes him and puts this kid in front of the whole kingdom, and he's like, we're going to burn this kid, right? He touched my daughter, that's crazy. We're going to burn him, right? So Guru Padmasambhava, this realized being, goes into a meditative pose. So he simply sits down before they light up all the wood around them, which they're about to burn him, and it goes into a peaceful sense of being, similar to how a lotus is just above the water.
you know, and it's just kept there. So he simply becomes present and it goes into deep meditation. And so they light it, and actually it's a crazy fire, so they're actually burning a human being, right? And so he's simply there sitting, and he waits, and they all wait, and the flames go, and they see he's still there. And it goes to a point where there's ash over his body. And as there's ash over his body, Guru Paramasamma stands up as if nothing happened, as if he's just woken up from a nap. And in seeing that, the king actually gives his kingdom to Guru Paramasamma. He literally gives everything. He gives his daughter too. He's pretty mind blown, you know. So, what the moral of that story is that you must too find the ability that in your moments of clarity, you have an allowance to exist. And so that existential allowance is what keeps you there. So if you're in a social setting where you don't like the ideas, or let's say you're around and you're like, gosh, you're caught in some form of drama, it's very important, and like Guru Padmasambhava, you cultivate and have a skill. It's like a skill, ability of simply being present, being gentle and observing that social fire. You know, that social pressure, it's fire, it's a flame. You know, it's tension, because your mind at first is trying to, oh gosh, what's happening? But then, in your ability to acknowledge yourself as the existence you are, and as the purity or the clarity of your moment, you become untouched. And that untouched means that people will look at your eyes and they will see nothing. And that is powerful, because they will see that it's as if this being has been so aware of the present moment that all life has become present. And this is very important, because I was at first put in a structure of thought where weakness was what was grabbing onto me as ideology. It was as if those ideas were just like grabbing me and pulling me into a corner of depression. So, regardless, I noticed that all ideology is kept there by how I have framed reality. And so as I observe reality in the present moment, I'm always a new allowance. You might see many people still have the idea of heaven or hell, but it's not about heaven or hell as much at this point. Heaven and hell happens after you die. Before you're dead, you're not really supposed to think about death, because you can't see past that door. So what you're supposed to think about is actually life. If you're alive, you need to think about life. So in observing life, you must see, what is it that you're calling life? And you don't leave it in the abstract. So just because you ask a question and you don't know it, you follow that deep I don't know. And so you become curious, you become aware. It's as if like this question has come in your reality, and you're like, who am I? And so as this who am I has come in, you're like, okay. And suddenly it's like you've never paid this much attention in hyperfocus to your room, to where you exist. And so as you become aware of it, you suddenly see it's not that you lose yourself, you become able, you become oriented. When you become self-aware, when you, in a sense, become observant and mindful, in a sense very gentle and compassionate towards allowing all movement to move, you will see that you will no longer be the experience of that side of the rock under the pressure of the river. You're just the river. You flow with life, and you flow well. And so excitement is truly a beacon towards existential permissions that become your most grandest adventure, I guess I'll say. This is life, it's now. You care too much, you'll miss some things in regards to seeing some things. In other words, if I choose to every day eat the same food and not try something else, of course, I'm not letting myself try something. So it's very important for me to stop eating food that much, for example, and just going and observing outside. And being like, whoa, there's other things I could do, blah, blah, blah. Pretty much, in a sense, seeing that reality is a natural phenomenon, it's a natural process, regardless of how worried you are. Terence McKenna has a wonderful quote: nobody knows enough to worry. And in a sense, what he means by that is, you think you're seeing the end. You think you know how you're ending. You think you know what you are. But certainty is a byproduct of a much more deeper spark. In other words, consciousness is beyond the box. And so language seems to want to shape everything. And in a sense, language is not really your salvation. but simply you seeing that all forms of reality are a mirror of your being. And what that means is that if every single shape you're seeing in this reality was a mirror, how would that awareness be? And it would be a profound observance of an awareness of now, in which you're seeing that your being needs no interpretation as you are. For once you see the gift of life, death becomes an inspiration to find your eyes. Much blessing and namaste.